Hello there, I'm that Metroid guy. What a time to be a Metroid fan. Over 15 years we have waited for a follow-up to one of the greatest trilogies in gaming, 7 years since its announcement, and 5 years since the dreaded delay. But now we have finally had our first glimpse at what Metroid Prime 4 is going to be like. I wasn't able to react or stream my reaction to the reveal because I was away with my boyfriend. Happy Pride Month, by the way. But I could say without a doubt that I was absolutely blown away by what we were shown. As obvious as it sounds, Metroid Prime 4 looks like a true sequel to Metroid Prime 3 in about every way. I mean, duh. But it has the same vibes as the introduction of corruption. The visuals have massively evolved, and even the UI's had... Okay, I'm gonna stop myself before I become an incoherent mess, so I'm gonna go at this slowly because this game deserves it. I won't pretend I haven't seen others talk about the trailer, but I'm going to analyze everything I can about the trailer, speculate a little bit, and then at the end, I'm gonna give a quick first impression review of Samus's suit. It's not a short, so I get to be a little more thorough. Before we delve into the trailer properly, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Metroid videos. The reveal gave the channel a big boost, and we hit 10,000 subscribers just before. Thank you all so much for watching what I make and sparking conversations in the comments and the Discord. I will have a dedicated 10,000 subscriber stream here on YouTube when I can, so make sure to stick around for that. But first, and it feels amazing to be able to say this, let's watch the trailer for Metroid Prime 4 Beyond in its entirety. Welcome back. So, right off the bat, and something a lot of people have been talking about, the date. 20x9. Now, the X is a variable, so it could be something like 2009 or 2099, whatever Retro decides. The common belief is that the Metroid games take place in the 2080s, with Zero Mission taking place in 85, Federation Force during 86. Those dates are seen within the games themselves and are a good starting point, but Samus Returns is said to be set in 87, along with Super Metroid in promotional material. While there's conflicting information there, the dates do make sense to me. And something I need to point out is that the cosmic calendar in Metroid does not work the same as ours, obviously. The Galactic Federation is said to have been established in the cosmic year of 2000 or 2003, based on the Metroid manga and Zero Mission's manual respectively. There really needs to be a Metroid encyclopedia to definitively set this stuff in stone. It's getting a little complicated already, but to bring it back to Prime 4, or Beyond as I need to get used to saying, it's curious to potentially have a game set after Super Metroid, especially given the Space Pirates were firmly defeated at the end of that game. But there's been a lot of talk about the producer for Metroid Prime 4, Kensuke Tanabe, wanting to implement time mechanics to the game. That could potentially be why it's set so late. I don't want it to get convoluted if that is the case though, as is the danger with anything time related. But this may be a time where the varial part of the cosmic calendar actually plays a role in the story. I'm really curious as to what Retro is planning with this. Then the location, Galactic Federation Research Facility. Yeah, we're going after every detail. We will see shortly, but it's safe to assume that this is where the main plot device is located and what triggers the story for the whole game. We'll cover more of the environment and the inside of the facility as we get to it. Next, the Return of the King. It's the Gunship from Metroid Prime 3, same sounds and all, but with quite a makeover. The surface is a lot more metallic and the gold is considerably more muted compared to the previous design, but the red paint is more prominent. It's likely due to a push for the more realistic art style of Prime Remastered compared to the saturated, almost anime-ish look of Corruption. So that's not a bad thing at all. Plus, this scene is set at night, so maybe it'll have that bright glow we know in the day. What's interesting is that Samus exits from the top of this gunship, which isn't what she did in 3 at all. In fact, the hatch on the underside of the ship is still present. Of course, it's to capture that entrance from the first 2 Prime games, with the same jump, spin sounds, and emphasized booster flames. I do want to talk about Samus, but I'm going to save that for the end of the video so we keep moving. Just know that I like what I see. Something I'm a little less keen on is this. That is a drastically different Samus Jingle. I was not prepared for it at all, and I still don't know if I like it. It hasn't got that uplifting, hopeful, and yeah, Samus is here energy, but that might be the point. This version is a lot more somber, and it feels like hope is lost. That might just be the tone that Retro is going for with this game, and for that, it's absolutely perfect. I just need time to get used to it, and to see if that's what Retro's goal is with this new rendition. What adds to the somber tone is the setting and the color of the game so far. It's very dark and foggy, and the only color is from Samus herself, fire, and weapon projectiles. Not to mention the rain and dark clouds above setting the miserable mood. So again, this is something I'm gonna have to get used to. I'm not gonna have a knee-jerk reaction and say I hate it without considering why Retro, and presumably Kenji Yamamoto, has decided to go this route. I'm more curious than anything. A big talking point for me is the heads-up display. Finally, the geometry of Samus's helmet is reflected in the design of the HUD, like in Prime 1 and Hunters. And it's amazing how snug the energy bar fits in the top, and with a nice little shadow too. This redesigned HUD is incredible, and allows for more visibility without compromising important information, like the radar, danger indicator for environmental hazards, and even the addition of a compass. I also really appreciate the reticle being a lot less in the way this time. It always bothered me when the later versions of the Prime games came out with the borderline intrusive reticle, especially in Remastered without a toggle to disable it. The HUD for Prime 4 was made by Adlan Ramley. You have done a tremendous service for us. What's awesome is that the sound design for the transition to first person and the HUD loading up is still the same as the original Prime games. It's iconic as hell, which is why I'm curious as to why Samus's jingle was changed, as it's just as iconic to the Prime games as these sounds. There has to be a reason, so I'm trusting Retro's vision. Another thing that caught my eye is that the missile launcher is where the visor menu usually is, which is noticeably lacking visors to select. So it's easy to tell that this is instead a weapon menu with missiles being something to select into, like with Hunters and Federation Force. I think those games will have more influence on Beyond than I first thought, and other little details that were pointed out to me by Metroid Theorist, the energy at the top is the same amount as usual, the good old 99. While the missile count is way higher than usual, matching the 30 in Metroid 2. I'll go over the arm cannon itself when I talk about Samus later, so we'll keep going with the trailer. I just want to say how happy I am that we're getting straight up gameplay and not a cinematic trailer. I've gotten real sick of trailers being nothing but cinematic nonsense that has nothing to do with the actual game itself, and said game ends up being horribly generic and surface level when it comes to the gameplay itself. Thanks for showing us actual gameplay right off the bat. To take in the environment of this planet for a moment, it's incredibly rocky and there's no sign of vegetation anywhere, so this is definitely not Norian as I saw some people claim. Norian was surprisingly lush despite it being a Federation military outpost. A less crazy idea to throw out is Aether, specifically the area where Tia had landed. It has the rocky surroundings, it has the turn into the landing site, only now it's developed into a Federation facility. I don't think this is actually the case. I think this is a whole new planet, or potentially Sylosis, which is where Sylux is said to have come from. But I definitely don't think this is Norian. The turrets in the distance are a new design, and for all of its bulkier appearance, it still can't take a direct hit from an orbital beam. I hope they're scannable so I can make a video about them. The rain also continues to land on the visor and arm cannon from previous games. It's a lot less static compared to how Remastered implemented this onto the cannon, and it looks quite realistic. I'm so glad this is still here, and I wonder if other weather patterns can do something like this, such as snow landing on the cannon and visor. I'm curious to see, but won't be mad if it doesn't happen. Turning the corner, we get our first look at combat, as well as the space pirates and their new rendition for their theme, which sounds menacing and methodical. There's so much to uncover here. First thing to take note of is that locking on is still around, which I know a lot of people are going to be happy about. With locking on, there's also strafe dashing, and I can already expect some enemies that'll dash into you, forcing you to dash. The missiles function like those in Echoes and Corruption, so no animation cancelling for rapid fire. The missiles also look like they deal a bit more damage than in previous games. Usually it would take 2, but here a couple of power beam shots and marine weapon fire and then the missile on top is all it takes. Later on, just a single missile is used. But then again, for purposes of a trailer and maybe even playing on easy difficulty, it's hard to tell exactly. I do hope missiles are a bit stronger though. They always felt a bit weak without rapid fire. With missiles being selectable, I wonder if super missiles will return at all, as they weren't in Corruption. They might be a direct upgrade to missiles later on, something to opt into, a beam combo like before, or not available at all. We'll have to see. To talk about the HUD again, the reticles are not intrusive in the slightest, and now we can actually see what we're aiming at instead of a blue or green dot in the middle. The indicators to lock on and while locking on are noticeable enough to see that they're there, but subtle enough to not be overwhelming. I also noticed that when you're locking onto an enemy, the radar changes from a red diamond to an orange cross, and naturally green circles indicate allies. Again, Ramley, thank you for your work, and to everyone at Retro too. I want to show a quick list of who we know is working on Prime 4. Thank you to all of you guys for actually making this game a reality, and I have full faith in you to make this a great and memorable experience. Thank you. I also want to call attention to the performance and overall visuals of the game just for a moment. This game is running on the Nintendo Switch, and it's performing at 60 frames per second, like I hoped it would. Modern Retro is sticking to the roots of Retro's philosophy with the original Prime games. 60 frames per second is paramount because it's largely a first-person game, and this has to take the Japanese player base into consideration, which has historically not been too into first-person games as a nation and are prone to motion sickness. It's good to see Retro keep this philosophy alive, all while keeping the visuals stunning. I will say I was more wowed with the visuals of Remastered, but that's purely nostalgia playing an insane part there. That's not to say this looks bad, as I know some would twist it. I love how Beyond looks. It's running on the Nintendo Switch for crying out loud, and it looks this good and at 60 frames per second too. Retro is a studio full of incredibly talented people, and I need to remind myself that this is still coming out next year, presumably a holiday release. Back to the analysis though. There's a lot happening in the sky. First, the Space Pirate destroyers from Corruption have returned in full force. This is likely the mass production variant, as we see the ships that used Phazon self-destruct. These things are huge, and Corruption did a great job at setting the scale of them, and it's likely one of these that shot that turret from earlier. In the distance, we see a transport deploying drop pods that we see later on in the trailer. To me, it looks like a new design entirely, but it has the design language of typical pirate ships in the Prime games. What doesn't though is this ship. While clearly Space Pirate in design, it bears a striking resemblance to the Seraph from Halo, and in Zero Mission and Samus Returns, the Space Pirates do have a vessel that looks almost identical to this, only there it has a tail. This could be a variant of that vessel, a strike fighter or something along those lines. Hopefully these are scannable too. Things are just as interesting on the ground. The door to the facility and the Federation art style in general heavily resembles that seen in Federation Force specifically, only with more graphical fidelity, consistency and world building. Off to the side, we see what looks like fighter jets for the Galactic Federation. To me, these are likely in-atmosphere interceptors. We see a few that have crashed, so no doubt these will be scannable. It's interesting to see the aesthetic differences between the Federation and Pirates again. Pirates are curved and smooth with sharp ends and colour, more organic too with parts sticking out of the ships. On the other hand, the Federation is more militaristic silver with flat sides and things built for purpose. Curved versus angular, classic. On the floor and in the distance, as I mentioned, we see Federation Marines engaging in combat with Space Pirates. We get a little bit of a better look at them later, so I want to talk about the pirates themselves. The Space Pirates here look like a mix between the Prime and Corruption designs, with the colours and sharp armour of Prime and the bug-like design of Corruption, mandibles included. The pirate sounds from Prime and Echoes are also back, which is an interesting decision, but one I will never argue against. Those shouts are the voice of the Space Pirates to me. Also, the ragdoll physics are great as always. And needless to say, it's good to see things flash red a little when taking damage, like always. Just something we kind of take for granted, I feel. When we head a little bit into the facility, we see a couple of pirates that are sitting on the verge of death with green blood on the walls. Not to have a Combat Evolved anniversary moment, but I'm glad that the blood is here. There's also a bit of wall that's been destroyed that reminds me of a Xenomorph head. Nice job if that's intentional. We also see that one of the pirate vessels from earlier has crashed here, so it looks like it might be scannable after all, which leads us nicely into the next part, the scan visor. I am so happy that scanning is back, with the same sounds and all. I cannot wait to read literally literally everything in this game. I also like that the entire object continues to be what indicates that something is scannable, rather than Prime's icon. Even this random protruding bar is scannable. I'm excited over scanning a metal bar, for God's sake. What's interesting is that scannable objects are green, likely things that aren't important to the combat or logbook, and when scanned, there is no longer any color. This makes it considerably more obvious what you have and haven't scanned. There are so many nice little quality of life details I'm already seeing, and it's great. Looking at the scan images of the pirates without their armor, it looks like they will still get close to attack if that blade is anything to go by. I heard some people talk about the possibility that the pirates are now Metroid hybrids because of this right image, with the energy in the core. While that is something the pirates would definitely do, I think the scan is just highlighting the weak point of the pirates and the general core, showing organ locations and the like, as the text makes note of their failure. There's also some text on a metal foundation when we turn to the left. These are sprinkled throughout the facility, but I think these are no more than aesthetic. But maybe they could feature Easter eggs to developer initials in some places. And now we get to the legend itself, the Morph Ball. I noticed an ever so slight dip to 30 frames during the start of the animation, but again, still in development and likely a first time use thing. It's good to see that the Morph Ball is still a hollow shell surrounding a ball of energy. I was a little worried that this would go away given the Morph Ball has been depicted with a more mechanical twist lately. That's not a bad thing, but there's something particularly cool and obvious about the Morph Ball being shown this way. It's unmistakable that the ball of energy is Samus, and she's not curled up like a lot of people still joke about. It's a little funny seeing Samus dive and then instantly disappear into the Morph Ball. The glow could maybe do with coming in a little earlier to hide Samus disappearing more, but then again, it happens so quick it's almost impossible to spot in motion, even after pointing it out. The Morph Ball design itself appears to be a continuation of Corruption's, with the blue energy in the middle, with the 3 grooves on either side of the shell, revealing the black plating underneath. Here it also has additional yet faint ridges following along the shape of the larger grooves of the shell, and according to Zoid Kirsch, one of the developers who worked on Prime and Echoes, the physics of the Morph Ball appears to be one-to-one to the trilogies, which I can absolutely agree with. The little bounce when colliding with a corner and how the ball rights itself, and even the camera work is almost identical, and that's a good thing. This is absolutely a case of, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. And of course, Morph Ball bombs are back, and I can only presume they function exactly the same as they do in the first 3 Prime games as well. Off to the side on the HUD, there's a little grid-like pattern that only appears during Morph Ball mode, so maybe this is where another mechanic is displayed, likely power bombs or maybe a whole new mechanic. We'll have to see. The fade to the next scene reveals the corpse of what I presume is a Galactic Federation Marine. The colours and overall look is the same as the design in Corruption, and we get a little bit of a better look at the design later. The space pirates are also using an explosive charge to breach the door, and I wonder if this spot is where you can use a bomb to get higher up for an upgrade. Then we pan nicely into the next room when Samus turns the corner. The door explodes, and the pirates charge through the door into a room that, when paused at the right time, evokes a very similar vibe to a certain title screen. And as I'm sure you've seen plenty of other people point out, there is a Federation engineer and Marine moving an object into another room while others defend them. This seems to be the main target for the space pirates as one starts to charge for it despite taking direct fire from another Marine. This could be a random target to get Samus and Sylux to cross paths, or it is the main plot device for the whole story, which I believe to be the more plausible assumption. I could not tell you what it does, but given the speculation that time mechanics will play a role in Beyond, I feel like this will be related to it. Something I don't see many people point out is the holograms on the terminals. The left one is interesting in that the figure looks like an amorphous blob that is convulsing in on itself, which really reminds me of another enemy in Metroid, but it could also be the object that is getting pushed out of the room. It's hard to tell from this distance. The center hologram is identical to a black hole, just straight up, and also the logo of the game, but we'll get to that when we get there. Then the right hologram appears to be a planet with 2 moons. It's either the planet this facility is on, or potentially a destination setting. Again, hard to tell. And the last thing, there's an energy tank with a new design, very akin to the start of Corruption. The next scene has a lot of things to take note of. Even the first frame tells a lot. The terminals show the emblem of the Galactic Federation that started from Other M and has been in every Metroid game since. It's interesting to see it continue in the numbered Prime games, as previously, the emblem of the Federation was symbolized by the visor of the Marines. It's just neat to see it continue, because it is a decent design, if a little generic. I personally would have preferred the visor of the Marines approach, but that's just me. Another thing is that in the background we see a glass dome, likely the area we see during Sylux's reveal. More on that later. Then we see the drop pods from earlier in action, landing into the ground and opening up to reveal 2 pirates. And in the sky, we see the destroyer in low orbit. This shot is likely just done for the trailer, as we see in the cut to first person. The pirate that is shouting repeats the animation. We get a really good look at the pirates now, and they look so sick. The insectoid design language is really on show with them here. It's more obvious here that the colors match those of the Prime pirates, with dark greenish armor, purple skin, and yellow accents. There's even the reintroduction of antennas that were also present in the Prime pirates. Off to the right is this odd red button looking thing. I'm gonna assume this is just an energy drop and the model is still a work in progress. Just behind the orb is another drop pod crashing in. We also get a better look at the design for the Federation Marines here. They have the same overall look of the Corruption design, but the colours are more reminiscent of the Echoes design, which I personally appreciate. The map also gives us a clue that this game will not be open world as I hoped it wouldn't be, as we see doors behaving like they always have done. Sure, there may be bigger areas segmented by doors, but this to me is a big relief that Retro is not pushing for an open world game. The player here also takes a hit from a pirate shot, indicated by the screen turning redder. No damage is done, but that's likely because it's for trailer purposes. Though it would be pretty funny if there was just a random, unplanned game over screen, which I'm also excited to see because they're usually pretty haunting in the Prime games. The pirate that gets killed very quickly turns to dust and disappears. Before, it would take a few moments after the model stops ragdolling to fade out. Now it's just instantly going, likely for performance reasons. We get to see the charge beam in action, and it's kind of disappointing, I won't lie. It's awesome that it has the same sounds, but I feel like it lacks that powerful punch and spectacle to go along with them. The charge ball isn't that eye-catching, and the way the arm cannon expands isn't that dramatic and bright either. Again, maybe there's a reason for this design choice and it gets more powerful later into the game. We'll have to see. We also get a better look at the dash in motion, and there's a new speedline effect in the HUD to indicate that you are dashing. An entirely new feature that I noticed is that when the player moves ahead of the newly deployed space pirates, there is a subtle indicator that one is shooting from that direction. This is a nice bit of accessibility and overall gives better awareness to the player. This is a really nice feature. As we turn back around to face the pirates that deployed behind the player, outside we see some crates that likely function the same as they do in the previous games to drop pickups. Next, we see Samus do a dramatic roll to avoid debris from crashing into her from the explosion ahead. As stated earlier, this is likely set in the dome that we saw earlier. We also get a better look at the Federation jets we saw in the first combat scene, and they're quite low quality. But then again, it's a minor background piece to a game that still has a year of development to it. It's just cool to have more things to talk and learn about. I want to know the designation and class of this thing. And then the scene that everyone is talking about, the man himself, Sylux finally makes his long-awaited return, and joined alongside him are space pirates. The models update to higher quality ones in real time. As well as Mocktroids, as seen in Super Metroid. No, these are not the Metroids we know, and the clue is in the nucleus. Metroids have multiple, very noticeable nuclei, whereas Mocktroids have a single central nucleus. These may be failed clones of the Metroid that he acquired at the end of Federation Force, but to him, they still provide some use in some way, be it intimidation or something a bit more personal, such as seeing himself as like a Mocktroid to Samus's Metroid, if that makes sense. If you know one of my first videos theorizing about Sylux's origins, you know what I'm on about. We know Sylux has a deep hatred for the Federation and Samus, so it would make sense to explore why that is. I also believed he hated the pirates, but I guess there is more going on than we can see. Maybe this is a case of mutual goals, and so an alliance forms. I recommend watching Fat Brett's rundown on Sylux, and his other Metroid videos in general. It's good stuff. To talk about Sylux more, I'm so glad he has had a minimal redesign. Sure, there are changes to make him have higher graphical fidelity and fit the main Prime aesthetic, but he has his core appearance intact. He has the thin vertical visor that lights up, which is a sick look. He has an intimidating presence about him, which is something I hoped he would have, and his weapon, the shock coil, is very prominent in his silhouette, along with those shoulders. There is no mistaking who this guy is, and his body language is very masculine and weighty, as evidenced by his stomps into the scene. It's giving me flashbacks. He also just looks incredible detail-wise. You can see the muscle fibers in the joints and neck, and it gives him an almost organic feel to him. And that tilt of the head, this guy is methodical and evokes that conniving and calculating vibe that Dark Samus had back in Echoes, and I'm all here for it. And damn, that menacing guitar riff too. I also keep referring to Sylux as male. Sure, we don't know if Sylux is male, female, hell, we don't even know if Sylux is even human. But I personally believe he is a human male and is a failed attempt at replicating Samus and her power suit. I say failed because I think he escaped, and the goal to replicate Samus and her suit was very much a success. Too successful. We haven't seen any other character turn into a ball of energy like how Samus can. The pirates tried and failed, so the fact that Sylux can do so shows that the Federation knows more about Chozo technology than they let on to me. Plus, the Galactic Federation has been shown to primarily consist of humans, both in its political scene and especially in its military. It's only in expanded material that otherwise is shown, which partially conflicts with Samus Returns and other M's depictions of those in power at the Federation, all human. Then we cut to what looks like an entirely different scene, set in what I can guess is the same location, but at a different time, as evidenced by the background and lighting, but more so by Sylux himself in the reflection of Samus's visor. His posture is different, and this scene feels more likely to be his first appearance in the game chronologically speaking. That might just be me going crazy though, as the light on Samus flickers in the pattern of a flame. We'll have to see. And if there isn't a better set of shots to truly show how good this game looks, the logo. Not only is it incorporating the newer Metroid logo, it's also using the metallic gradient of Corruption and Trilogy, only here it's inverted and with a rougher finish as opposed to the shine. The Prime text is that of Remastered's logo, and then beyond. I'm not the biggest fan of the font used here, not gonna lie. It reminds me of something you'd see on a Marvel film logo, but that's just me. I don't mind the name though, but the main thing to take notice of is the object behind the text. This is 100% a representation of a black hole event horizon, showing the light that's from behind it on the top and the bottom. It's such a cool look, and a neat play on the classic circle emblem that's behind the text of the Metroid logos. This is also what is making me think that the object that the pirates were after is a central plot device, as this logo bears resemblance to that object. The center also appears to be a cluster of stars, likely a galaxy with the glowing core representing the black hole itself at the center of it. And to add on to the speculation of Beyond featuring space-time manipulation mechanics, physicists have often hypothesized that black holes are, for a lack of a better way of putting it, wormholes, acting as gates to and from spaces and time, as the laws of physics break at the center of a black hole due to their unimaginable mass. Maybe Retro took those ideas and implemented them into the main gameplay gimmick of Beyond. I'm curious to see. Opening the ending scene of the trailer, we get this beautiful and brand new track, again likely composed by Yamamoto. It evokes the mystery and grandeur of Phendrana Drifts. It makes me want to look up into the stars. That's a powerful feeling for me, and it gives me confidence that the overall soundtrack will be great. When we fade into the jungle scene, we're greeted by Samus stepping out from what looks like a portal into a lush jungle. Something that's peculiar is that Samus's visor is noticeably not green and is more pink. I think that the lights of her suit in general are pink as well. Please do not tell me this is a gravity feature scenario. I wouldn't be the happiest. We see a few colourful bird-like aliens with multiple eyes sweep past the camera. Speaking of which, the way this scene is framed and played out is almost identical to the area introduction scenes of the prior games. I'm glad that seems to be returning. I mentioned it briefly. I'm really curious about the portal-like effect. Is it similar to the dimension hopping mechanic from Echoes, only here it's time jumping? It could instead be a way to go to different planets, but I vaguely remember hearing that Prime 4 will largely focus on one world somewhere. I need to know. We then get an amazing look at this jungle. I can't wait to explore it and see what creatures inhabit this place. I noticed that there is some 2D imagery going on in the background, with the likely exception of the giant tree. Even this bridge structure appears to be a flat image. It's a good way to save resources for things in the distance, along with fog. I am also going to wager that this location is not Talon 4, as I've seen some say, or the location we see for the majority of the trailer. I'm not opposed to the idea, but I just don't think that's the case. I can't quite tell what the accents are on the bridge to give a clue to the origins or creators, but there are gem-like objects on the struts, and the obvious answer would be Chozo. But I'm gonna say this isn't Chozo, maybe Olympic instead as a wild guess. That, or it's an entirely new lost civilization to learn about. And then, the release window, 2025. I'm going to guess Prime 4 will be a holiday release, maybe to tie in with the successor to the Switch, which is said to be backwards compatible. I wonder if this will be a case where Prime 4 releases on both, like Breath of the Wild, but noticeably performs better on the newer hardware. Either way, I'm so excited for this game, and I always believed in Retro to be able to pull this off. This trailer was an absolute fever dream. Sure, it didn't catch me by surprise as much as Remastered did, as I knew we would see Prime 4 eventually, but I'm still so happy to finally see the game itself, and not just a logo now, and I don't have to hear some people say that this game got cancelled again or never existed anymore. Finally! Prime 4 looks absolutely gorgeous, and at 60 frames too. Retro is full of talented developers, man. Which reminds me, I don't believe this is Switch 2 footage, as a lot of people have been claiming, and it's bothered me how many people automatically say it is just because the game visually looks good and plays good. It's not the compliment that people think it is to say, as it undermines the work that the devs put into this game to make it work on the platform it's running on. We all know that the Switch is aging and that the successor is not that far off, but for what it's worth, Nintendo themselves has said this is running on the Switch itself, and many have pointed out that animations and lighting are the giveaways. I firmly believe that the people at Retro Studios have put in an insane amount of effort to make Beyond run on the Switch, and by God has it paid off. I also really like the vibe of this game. It has an unsettling and cold aura about it. It helps that the majority of the trailer is set in the interior of a research facility, but I can't shake that feeling. It's probably why the last scene resonates so well with me. It's the immediate polar opposite. I expect Prime 4 to come out around November of next year, and if it looks this good now, I can't wait to see the finished game and obsess over it. And now to talk about the thing that a lot of people have been messaging and commenting. What do I think about Samus's design here? Well, I really like how Samus looks. I'm glad that the overall look of her suit is that of the Varia suit from Echoes and Corruption, as it's the face of the Prime series to me. In fact, I thought it was exactly the same at first in this shot, with the visor and chest lights, texturing and the colours, but then when she lands, it's very clear that that's not the case. Right off the bat, this is an entirely new model, duh, but the design itself has a lot of changes as well as a lot in common with what's come before. The visor is the same shape as that of the visor from Echoes onward, but has been scaled up just a touch, enough for it to be noticeable. Also, I think the curve of the visor is also a difference. I'm pretty sure it was just a flat plane before. The visor also has that hexagonal texturing seen in Remastered, but it's a bit more obvious this time around. It looked a little jarring at first, sure, but I quickly got used to it. Plus, it allowed room for this shot to be as impactful as it is. The hand shares more in common with the hand of Dread's Varia suit. The knuckles are their own segment rather than covered in plating like that of Remastered. Except here, it matches the coloration of the rest of the armor as opposed to the black on the knuckles themselves. The palm itself doesn't possess any of the gold armor plating as we usually see, and is instead the flexible undersuit. The armor on the underside of the wrist has some lift to it to allow more room for Samus to move her hand. Even the plate of armor on the back of the hand is curved up at the wrist. It's a nice little detail that could help reduce clipping in animations, and even adds to the believability that Samus can wear this suit and be mobile with her hand, which sends us nicely into the proportions of the suit. And a lot of people have been talking about this specifically. The way I describe this suit is that it reminds me of those high quality Varia suit cosplays that occasionally pop up. I don't say that as a bad thing at all though. I say that because the proportions actually match how a real woman would fit into a suit like this. The waist has been widened a little bit, the shoulders are shown more explicitly being connected to the body, and her arms are closer together. The pauldrons are also slightly shrunk with visible gaps and are more specifically placed on the top of the shoulders, rather than looking like it's part of the shoulder itself where the arms come down from. The lights on the pauldrons are repeated blocks of lights, rather than segmented dots like before. The big thing for me is the helmet. It's way larger, segmented more from the body so the neck is more visible like in Metroid Dread, but also similar to how the helmet tends to look in cosplays. It looks more relaxed and seems to take Dread's approach in how to show Samus's figure, rather than the tucked in look of Super or Prime's Varia suits. Turning to the back, the design feels more like a refinement of Corruption's helmet, and given the proportion shifts, it gives this area a bit more room to breathe and minimize clipping, because boy did that happen a lot before and very obviously too. I like these changes a lot as they add a lot more believability to Samus and Metroid as a whole. It's quite fun. The key word is believability. I have seen endless threads of comments saying that Samus's proportions in previous games are unbelievable over the years, and Samus's latest outings seem to be making a really good effort to try and resolve that, and I think it's really paying off. Keeping things slightly relevant, the animations of Samus and the characters in the trailer in general are awesome. This is also where I hear a few people that know better than me say that this is the ultimate tell that the game runs on the Switch. I particularly like Samus's body language in her introductory scene too. That little jut of the hip like in Dread, it's really nice. Even little things like that make me smile somehow. She has her usual stoic and powerful presence, and that's what matters. And as I'm sure a few people are wondering if I'd point it out, Samus's suit hasn't got higher heels, thank God. And I guess because I mentioned it a lot lately, her butt hasn't got that odd indent as seen before, but the hips are nice and wide. It's a very appealing and believable figure for Samus overall. Moving on to the colours of the suit, they are almost identical to that of the remastered Varia suit, with lighting playing a more vital role in fleshing them out, notably on the inner layer thanks to the finish of the metal. I believe there's a bit of bump mapping going on to give the illusion of depth in the seams, while other areas are more explicitly sculpted to give a shape. Think of the ribs versus the waist. The orange of the armour has a more bronze tint to it compared to that of the remastered Varia suit, but again, lighting is probably playing a greater factor here. The red of the armor is very strong though, even in the darker area, it's striking just how much it stands out. And then there's the green highlights. I love how strong the color is on these. I know I'm always an advocate for blue lights, but I don't mind when the green is a bit more in your face. I like saturated colors, what can I say? But the part that's very interesting to me is the arm cannon. The arm cannon here bears a lot of similarities to the arm cannon seen in Other M, but it's good. It's taking a lot of design elements of that and incorporating it into something that actually works. It has the exact same blue color rather than the greenish steel look we usually see. It even possesses the lights seen near the control panel area, as well as the sharp protrusion at the elbow, yellow, and to top it off, when shifting to first person, we see this ridge-like design on the other arm cannon too, only here it's given a little more depth, and it even features an exhaust structure. I swear anything good that other M had has been taken from it, put in a load of other places and improved on. That's probably the best course of action. The animations of the arm cannon are also great and punchy, but as I said earlier, the charge beam could be better. And then there's Samus at the end of the trailer, and this is why I made a big deal about lighting. The yellow of the inner armor is more illuminated, and so it's way more noticeable, but I could say without a shadow of a doubt that she does not have green highlights here. There may be a gameplay mechanic or something involved, but I just hope that Beyond doesn't take too much from Other M and create a gravity feature situation again. In my review for that, I said that the pink highlights would be interesting, but I need to see why they are pink here. It could be to showcase the selected visor, it could be relating to the portal looking thing behind Samus, it could be a placeholder or an error, or it could be so that we're not spoiled on a new suit design and this was used instead. I really need to play this game to know. So if you want my overall thoughts on her design so far, it's a solid A+ for now. I do prefer the hulking look of her Echo's appearance, and I've still only seen a small amount of it, but I do really like what I see and respect the direction shift. Once I've actually used it, then I'll give a definitive opinion on Samus's new Varia suit. That's just about all I can say about the trailer for Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. Wow, that's wild to say. I hope this was about what you expected from me. I tried to cover all that I could, but if I missed some things, please let me know in the comments below. Again, sorry I was a little late to this, but you know, life happens. I want to thank you again for watching and subscribing to the channel. It really meant a lot to me to hear people say I was the first person they thought of when the trailer dropped, and wanting to know what I thought about Samus's design as well. It was really heartwarming. Thank you so much for 10, 11,000, 12,000? Wow, where did you all come from? That was quick. Okay, I will get a livestream going here at some point to celebrate it. But first, I have a lore video to work on, a review series to finish, and then another lore video that you guys voted for. I do want to give a quick shout out to my patrons. You guys have been supporting me for a while, and there are even a couple of new faces. And with me kicking back into gear with videos, I want to make sure your support is both seen and respected. If you guys would like to support me on Patreon, I would be highly thankful. You will get early access to proper videos like these, and even get previews. There is even a Patreon chat in my Discord where you can suggest videos for me to make. That said, do not pledge to my Patreon if you cannot spare your money. You watching and sharing my videos does more than enough. Thank you very much for your support, no matter how you do it. And with that, I've been that Metroid guy, and I'll see you on the next mission. Bye bye.